Hey people, welcome to the Run Test. It's Kieran here, and in this video, brought to you in partnership with Precision Fuel and Hydration, I'm going to be comparing two big hitting trail shoes. I'm going to be looking at the brand new HOKA Tecton X2 carbon plated trail shoe up against an older favourite, the HOKA Speedgoat 5. Which of these should you be spending your money on? Which one's going to suit your running on the trails the best? Watch on to find out. Now before we get into that, I'm at a point in my running where I like nothing better than to lace up a good rolling trail shoe, something like one of these two, stick on a pack, stick some fuel, some water, some essentials in that pack and go and get lost for a few hours on the trails. So when I'm out on those magic long hauls, I know at some point my energy levels, my motivation, my decision making and that mental clarity tends to dwindle. At that point I need something to restore my brain, kickstart my engine. If there's a cafe nearby, I'll often stop for a little espresso with a bit of honey in it to get me going again. But often when you're out in the kind of wild trails, that is not an option. Now when that happens, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve to get myself going again. One of them is to take a well-timed caffeine gel, something like this Precision Fuel and Hydration 30 gram carbohydrate gel. It's got 100 milligrams of caffeine. It's got just enough of a punch that you need to get you going again, get the brain back engaged and give you a little bit more kind of energy on the move. And often I'll tend to now take that around 20 to 30 minutes before I know I'm going to need it. A key trigger of this is when I feel myself getting grumpy on the trails, a bit tired, a bit grumpy. I'm like, I'm going to need something in a bit. And that gives that caffeine time to work. For different people, that's going to take different amounts of time for the caffeine to kind of kick in and work. It depends on how much coffee you drink. It depends on how your own kind of body responds to caffeine itself. So for me, I know that's kind of roughly right. So if you fancy giving these a try, you can hit the link in the caption below. That will take you through to the Precision Fuel and Hydration store. It'll also apply a 15% discount code for the run testers on all the products you buy. There's a really good range. You can also find some excellent insights into how and when to use caffeine and other kind of fueling on your runs. And there's also a link down there to get stuck into a fueling planner. It's a great tool to work out how and when and what you need to fuel. It's a great starting point if you're not sure what your fueling strategy should be for a certain race or a certain run. So go and check that out. Onto the head-to-head of these shoes, and first up some quick details. When it comes to the stack height, the Speedgoat 5 comes in with a 32-28mm heel to forefoot. The Tecton X2 is 32mm in the heel as well and 27mm in the forefoot. That means that the Tecton X2 has a slightly higher 5mm drop than the Speedgoat 5's 4mm drop. When it comes to weight, the Speedgoat 5 weighs in at 10.3 ounces or 291 grams. The Tecton X2 is slightly lighter at 9.3 ounces or 265 grams. Price-wise, the Speedgoat 5 is going to cost you £140 or $155. The Tecton X2, chunk more expensive at £180 or $220. Let's have a quick whip round in comparison of these two shoes, then starting with the Tecton X2. So the major difference here between this and the Tecton X1 is a new upper. You've got a kind of a water-resistant, hydrophobic upper, matrix upper. That's brand new. It's fairly kind of dense. It's pretty structured. That compares to the Speedgoat 5, which has a double-layered jacquard mesh upper, which I think is got a slightly softer, a bit kind of looser maybe than on the Tecton X2. They've both got flat lay gusseted tongues, so really comfortable across the top of the foot on both those, not much to choose between them. In terms of the midsoles, you've got ProFly X construction here in the Tecton X2. That's got parallel carbon plates in there as well. With the Speedgoat 5, you've got a single density compression EVA moulded midsole. There's no carbon plate. The other thing is this has got a late stage meta rocker, whereas the Tecton X2 has an early stage meta rocker, so a difference there. So if you look at the heel collars, I think it's ever so slightly kind of narrower in the Speedgoat 5 than the HOKA Tecton X, and it rises up a little bit higher and kicks away at the back there. So I've never had any Achilles rubbing, but that is slightly different. It's a little bit more raised than the HOKA Tecton X2. Flip them over then, you've got Vibram Mega Grip outsoles on both of these. The main difference here, apart from the placement and the lug pattern, is that the Speedgoat 5 has slightly deeper lugs at 5mm compared to the HOKA Tecton X2's 4mm lugs. So you've got marginally more kind of aggressive grip on the Speedgoat 5, I think. And there's also marginally more kind of coverage overall for that outsole rubber in terms of durability, but this is in a section on the Tecton X2 where mainly you're not going to hit and you shouldn't really get too much damage, hopefully. So I've just done my usual side-by-side mile. I've got the HOKA Speedgoat 5 on my left foot, I've got the Tecton X2 on my right foot. A mile on some quite light trails really, just to see, a bit of road as well, because these are probably fairly good road to trail shoes as well. And the differences here, I think, are marginal. It was the same for me with the Speedgoat 5 and the original Tecton X. Obviously the Tecton X2, there's not much that's changed here. You've got some new uppers, but essentially the midsole unit is pretty much exactly the same. The HOKA Tecton X2, there is definitely a little bit more spring, there is definitely a little bit more energy, but it's not that pronounced. You know, if you're thinking about a carbon plate shoe versus a non-carbon plate shoe, you're not going to put the Tecton X2 on and all of a sudden feel this kind of really aggressive, you know, carbon plate and foam combination springing you forward. There is more energy there. It does feel better on road sections and firmer trails. If you like that kind of sort of slightly softer sink and then spring back. It's very nuanced though, it's not huge. The Speedgoat 5, I think overall they sort of run a little bit flatter, a little bit firmer. I don't think there's as much of a feeling of the kind of toe spring and the rocker necessarily, but again, I'm talking about very, very fine margins here. And actually, you know, if you run in them and close your eyes, well, not a great idea, but you know what I mean. If you're not really concentrating, you could probably run a marathon in both in these different shoes and probably not get into too much trouble as far as I'm concerned. It sort of doesn't feel that different. If you like a shoe that's going to be slightly more connected to the ground, this is still a big kind of stack of cushioning on the Speedgoat 5, but I think you could just feel a little bit more of the ground coming up through the shoe in a good way. You know, you're a bit more aware of what's going on underfoot. The Tecton X2, I guess, sort of softens that and mutes it a little bit. So yeah, depending on what kind of trails you're running, you know, I'd definitely say if you're going to go for something that's going to be like a really runnable, nicely groomed, compacted trails without too much kind of crazy technical stuff going on underfoot, then the Tecton X2 is going to be a great shoe. I think it'd be a good shoe for running ultra where you want a little bit of extra deep into the run. I think if you want something that's, you know, more for sort of traditional kind of trails or more technical trails, I think the Speedgoat 5 is probably going to handle a little bit better. On some other key things like step-in comfort, I would say both of these shoes are pretty much on par. They both feel good when you first put them on. They're really easy shoes to slip on and go and move in. Not really fussy to get any kind of lockdown fit and all of that kind of stuff. Put them on, lace them up, go. That's all good. Tick the boxes, nothing to choose between them there. And then when it comes to kind of weight, I think they both feel pretty much the same on the foot here. And these are both shoes that I can happily kind of roll along in. They're good for long distance on the trails. No hot spots, no blisters. They've just got, you know, I think you benefit from the rocker. You'll feel like you're clipping through kind of easy, kind of nice, kind of rolling. You forget they're there. They're a very, very good sort of easy trail shoe as far as I'm concerned. When it comes to stability, there's marginally more stability, I think, coming from the Speedgoat 5. I think just because it's got a slightly firmer platform. So again, it's marginal here. There's not a huge amount to choose. So that may become an issue over kind of longer distances, perhaps. On grip as well, I think these perform pretty much on par. I put the Tecton X2 through a really quite big challenge at the Maverick X More Ultra, where it's very, very slippy, very, very wet, very steep conditions. It did okay. It wasn't brilliant in the slicker stuff. I think, you know, there were plenty of people there running in Speedgoat 5s, and they seemed to be kind of suffering the same kind of slipping on the same kind of bits as I was. And overall, in the runs that I've done in the Speedgoat 5 earlier than this, like way back, so overall in terms of grip, I think you're going to get a very sort of similar performance out of both of these. So a really quick word on fit then. I ran in the UK 8.5 in both the Speedgoat 5 and the Tecton X2. And I think I'd go true to size in these shoes, unless you really want a little bit of extra room. You know, if you know you get toes bashing up against the ends and you always go half a size up with your trail shoes, then go half a size up in these. There's very little to choose between the way they fit. I think they've got good heel hold in both, good lockdown across the top of the foot. I think the main difference really here is that the Speedgoat 5, I feel, ever so slightly narrower, just beyond the back of your toes, you know, into that toe box. It's slightly narrower. Also, where the laces, the way they're structured, they've got this little bit of elastic right at the end. I think just kind of holds across the top of those toes, just a little bit narrower than on the Tecton X. The laces finish further up the shoe, and I think that really kind of makes them feel a little bit more roomy. It's a little bit less kind of tight. I don't know if you like that bit of lockdown, extra lockdown kind of further along the toes, but I think I prefer the Tecton X2 for that slightly extra bit of room. And overall, I'd say it's very, very marginal, but I'd say there's slightly more room in the toe box in the Tecton X2 than in the Speedgoat 5, but it's not a great deal. I wouldn't be buying this Tecton X2 because they've got a wider toe box. So my verdict on the HOKA Tecton X2 versus the Speedgoat 5 is pretty much the same as the Tecton X versus the Speedgoat 5, where there's not very much to kind of differentiate these two shoes. Yes, the Tecton X2 is a little bit more cushioned, it's a little bit more energetic, it's a little bit more springy, it's a bit softer, but we are talking very fine margins here. It's not that discernible. You're not getting a huge amount extra here, I don't think, in terms of pop and energy. there's enough. And I think over longer distances, maybe that's going to be something that would be quite rewarding if you're doing an ultra where it's going to be a lot on kind of sort of slightly firmer ground and easier running ground through towns, those bits. Then the Tecton X2, I'd probably choose it kind of marginally over the Speedgoat 5 for that. These are both great shoes. I really enjoyed running in both of these. I think they can both do slightly more technical trails as well. I think if you want something that's got a little bit more connection with the ground, you want to feel a bit more kind of slightly sort of more stable platform, the Speedgoat 5. If you want something that's going to give you a little bit of extra energy, a little bit softer, a little bit more maybe protective of the feet, a bit more forgiving in terms of cushioning and impact coming up, then, you know, the Tecton X2's going to do that. But I think the big thing here is I personally don't think, if you're looking for the carbon plate and that foam to give you energy in terms of a trail shoe, extra energy, I don't think it does over the Speedgoat 5. I don't think I would buy it, you know, and I don't think it's worth the extra money. The difference here is so sort of marginal that for me, if you're looking, you know, basically for best value for money, I think the Speedgoat 5 wins it. That said, I do love running in the Tecton X2. It is a slightly more fun, lively shoe to run in, and there are some cases where I think it probably beats the Speedgoat 5, and I would be picking it particularly, again, as I said, sort of longer. If I'm going to do like a 100k ultra or something like that on the trails, then I think it has a place. And here's the trick, actually, if you're going to try and get a Tecton X, maybe go and get the original Tecton X rather than the Tecton X2. You know, if you can get that in at the same price as a Speedgoat 5, then I think it's probably worth it. But at a kind of full price, for me, I think the winning shoe still really is the Speedgoat 5. I think that's the one that represents the best value for money, has the kind of best versatility, and yeah, I would be picking the Speedgoat 5 if I could only pick one shoe out of these two. So there you have it. That has been my head-to-head of the HOKA Tecton X2 and the Speedgoat 5. Hope you've enjoyed it. We've got lots of other head-to-heads on the channels. There'll be a full review of the Tecton X2 coming up soon, so don't forget to like and subscribe. Ring that bell so you get an alert for when that lands. Yeah, any questions about these two shoes, as ever, hit us up in the comments below. Would love to sort of hear your thoughts on the shoes as well if you've had a chance to run in them. So feel free to chime in. It's always useful. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure to talk to you about these shoes. If you're interested in road to trail shoes generally, there's a video popping up on the channel right now. Otherwise, I will see you again soon on the Run Testers. Happy running, people. Good luck with whatever it is that you're trying to achieve out there.